Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be doing a video a little bit different from the ones I've done before. We're not going to go into any sort of mapping techniques, and we're not going to go into any of the in-game features of Thrall, but I did want to talk about something that I put a fair bit of work into and is custom for this game, uh, and that actually is the save system. This is something that I basically didn't build from the ground up, but I heavily modified within the engine to work the way that I needed it to. And what I'm going to talk about today is how I came to this particular type of save system, how it works, and I'm even going to show you some examples of what it looks like when it doesn't work properly. So to begin with, it's important to go over what this game features and why this save system is necessary. So Thrall is a game that I'm currently working on that implements a randomized loot system where loot is randomly generated. And I'm actually going to show you in the database here, all the weapons and armors have tons of blank spots. There's a bunch of templates near the bottom, but let's see, in the weapons we have 523 database entries. But they only actually start with the templates after about 147, and everything prior to that is blank except for 5 slots. Same with the armors. The reason for that is because these are technically inventory slots, whether it's your held inventory, your storage, the shop inventory, or even the loot table where the items drop from. Every single one of these slots is used to randomly generate a new piece of equipment. And the way that works is it actually takes a template, such as this one here. It'll randomly take a template. It'll then assign a prefix to the template, which will determine any modifiers, and then it will randomly generate its stats based on its level, which is actually used in the description. So that is essentially how this game randomly generates loot, but what that does is it means that every single time you play this game, every time a single piece of loot is generated, you will get something completely different. If I show you here, I'm actually going to show you some of my code. So these are all the templates that the game draws from when generating a piece of loot, and it determines it based on rarity. And then it actually determines, okay, is it in a shop? Is it storage? And we're going to generate loot based on that. And then it determines, is it generating an item, a weapon, or an armor? Let's use a weapon, for example. It'll draw from it will generate the drop chance to determine the rarity, and then it will draw from, based on what the rarity is, what template it to draw from. It copies that template, and then it randomly generates the attack stat, the agility stat, the hit stat, and its crit stat is based on either the weapon type or any accessories or modifiers that it has. It also then copies over everything like the critical hit bonus, the fast attack, the dual attack, the element set, the state set. It generates a prefix. It takes the animation. It generates a random price. Because of this, you will never find two weapons that are identical. That's not true. You may find two weapons that are identical, but it's very, very, very rare. You're basically going to find new stuff every time. Now, there is one other feature of this game that I included, and that is the locker. And I'm going to show you how that works. This is all going to be tied together with the save system that I'm currently using. I don't know how loud that's going to be, so I'm just going to turn it down a bit. I'm really hoping that the volume is nice and quiet. I had to adjust some settings in OBS Studio just to make sure that this works properly, so fingers crossed this works. So the way that the locker works in this game, all this is going to be tied together by the save system, by the way. That is what we're talking about today. There is a feature in this game called the locker. The locker is this chest right here, and it can store one weapon and one armor. So I'm actually going to take out this sword here, and I'm going to save the game. And now we're going to reload, and we're going to load a different file, and we'll take a look at what's in the locker. It should be empty. So we're going to go to locker, and the locker is empty. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to, let's see, yeah, let's take this mace. We're going to unequip it from Mel here. We're going to throw it in the locker. And now we're going to save the game into account 2. So Mel no longer has the mace equipped. It is in the locker. So we're going to reset the game. We're going to go back into account 1. And now we're going to go back to the locker. And there's the item that we just took from account 2. And we now have it on a different file. So because of this locker, you can move items between different save files. That is something that was completely custom that I put into this game. It's not default to the engine at all. That took some finagling with figuring out how save files work and how things are loaded in. But it obviously works. That was actually one of the cooler things that I was able to implement, and I'm really happy and proud of that addition. However, there is one issue with this, and I will show you what that is. So let's put the mace back in. Actually, I guess it doesn't matter. We're just not going to save. And I'm going to do one thing here. I am going to take this save. Let's take, hold on. I'm going to close this. I'm just going to take, come on, open up. Why isn't it? What's going on here? Give me a second. Okay, we're back. Sorry, I had to figure out what was going on there. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to take this save file here. I'm just going to drag it into a separate folder. That's my brother's account. But I'm going to reload the game now. And there's no more save file 2. But we're going to go back into account 1. The mace should still be in the locker because we didn't actually save. And now what we do is we're going to save. And you'll notice, even when we press the arrow keys, we cannot move down to account 2. So this was one more thing that I had to make custom for this game, is making it so that you can only save in one file per playthrough. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is so that you cannot duplicate items. I will go back into some of the consequences that came about as of making that particular save structure where you can only have one file per playthrough. But for now, I'm going to show you why. And to do that, I'm going to disable the code that prevents you from selecting another file. And it's actually a very simple one. I literally just made it so that if you're saving, you cannot move the cursor. And so we're going to comment that out just for the purposes of showing you what happens when you can do that. So we've loaded into account 1. Now we're going to save, and now we can actually override other files. So we're going to save into account 2. Now we're going to reset. We're going to load account 2. I guess that wasn't really necessary. No, it was necessary. I guess not, actually. It doesn't really matter. And we still have the mace in here. Haha, I made a mistake. Okay, I'm going to take this mace out. And I'm going to save that into account 1. We're going to reload again. Load into account 2 again. I'm completely messing this up. I'm sorry. Start this over. Okay. Load into account 1. Forget everything I just set up to this point. Sorry. So, we have account 1. We have this mace. We're going to put it in the locker. We're going to save the game into a different file than the one we just loaded. Now this file here has not changed because we did not save into that account, which means the mace should still be in that person's inventory. But if you load into a separate file, the mace is still in the locker. which means you could take it out, but instead what we're going to do, and basically that's a way of having a duplicate item in two separate save files, but because we saved into a different file, what we can essentially do is go back into the original file. This is a really convoluted way of showing you how to do this, but that's okay. This is not going to be included in the game. And we can take the mace out, and we now have 2 copies of it. That was a very convoluted and confusing way of basically saying that if you can save in multiple accounts with one playthrough, you can duplicate items. So we're not going to do that. And instead, we're going to keep this line of code in here. And now we can only save in one file per playthrough, which means that we cannot duplicate items. Now, what is the problem with that? Well, as a lot of game developers know, having limited save systems introduces the capability of soft locks. There is a YouTuber and game developer and streamer by the name of Picaspri, and he has a whole series on how to soft lock Pokemon games in some of the most ridiculous, convoluted methods. It's actually pretty entertaining. But the fact of the matter is, the reason why you can soft lock Pokemon games so easily is because you can only have one save file. I haven't really played any of the newer games. I don't know if that's changed. But historically, Pokemon games only allow for one save file, which means you cannot create an earlier save and then reload that save if you soft lock your game later on. So having only one save file means that if you get stuck at one point, you cannot reload an earlier save. So that prompted another issue. What happens? Basically, it means that I had to remove soft locks from the game. I need to make sure that there's no place where the player can get stuck. And the biggest thing that I had to do with that is I had to remove game overs. So, to that end, when you get into an encounter now with an enemy, this was easy because it's touch encounters. If you lose a battle, instead of calling game over, it calls a battle loss common event, which essentially all that does is it costs you, where is it? There it is. It costs you all of your held items, all of your gold, and then it transfers you back to the home base. I wanted to make sure that there was at least some sort of cost for losing a battle, which is why I made it cost all consumable items in gold, but I did not want it to cost all weapons and armors, because that's basically the only way you actually have any sort of strength, and that your stats comes from your weapons and armors, not necessarily from the character growth. But consumable items and gold, those can absolutely be lost. So that was the method of preventing soft locks of the game. But there was one other thing that kind of tied into this respawn structure, and that was actually save-scumming. So there is a custom, I modified this load script, this file script, by doing this. So I've commented out these 2 lines here in both the write and read save data scripts within the scene file. Basically, this saves game map and game player data and reads that data. And I replaced it with these lines here. Now, these lines are actually used when creating a new file, a new game. It sets up the starting map. It puts the player in the starting map. I added a line of code to make the player transparent to avoid any visual glitches, and then it refreshes the player. Now, I am going to comment this out, and I'll comment these lines back in. And I'm going to show you what happens. I'm really hoping this doesn't crash. It might crash the game. Yep. Because there is no actual saved map or player data there. So we're going to do this instead. I need to actually create a setup where it saves map and player data. The biggest issue with having a randomly generated loot system where you could save anywhere is that you can save scum. And because loot is generated at the time of opening a chest or defeating an enemy, it would be very easy to do what I'm about to show you here. I'm going to debug so that I can walk through walls and avoid encounters. Okay, here we go. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do one thing here. I'm going to turn on a switch that just disables enemies. There we go. Okay, so here's a chest. This is actually a very good quality chest. I'm going to save the game. And now if I reload, I have to go back into the script here. So I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to bring this back and comment this out. Actually, I guess I can keep that. That's fine. And this is the base script that comes with the RMVX engine, where it saves your player position and map data, so that when you reload the save, you will appear right where you left off. So now I can open this chest. I don't like those items. I'm going to reload. And the chest is closed, and look at that, different items. Let's go with something better. Let's try one more. Not great, but you get the idea. By having a system where you can save and load the game at any point, you can save scum. You can just continuously open chests until you get legendary items, until you get super powerful items. And in a game that randomly generates loot, that's not what I intended for this game. So instead, what I've done is I've taken these lines out so that map data and player data is not saved with the file. And instead, map data is set to the starting map, and the player is put to the starting map every single time either a new game is created or a game is loaded. And this is the starting map here. So this is where the player would normally start. Normally they don't have a graphic, but once you've created a save file, they do, which is also why I turned the transparency on. And this event will run every single time the game is either started a new one or loaded. And what it does is if this switch is on, the continue switch, it will reload the game from your last point. So if you have not set up a save point, it will basically teleport you back to the home base, the Hollow Keep. In addition to that, because save point is off, it'll remove all your consumable items and your gold, which means that if you save in a dungeon and you don't have your if you save in a dungeon and you don't have sorry, lost my train of thought there. If you save in a dungeon and you reload the game, it will be treated as losing a battle. You lose all your golden items, and you'll get transported back to the keep. However, if you are at a save point, whether it is at the Hollow Keep or a save point within a dungeon, it will instead transfer you to that save point. And if it happens to be the specific one, which is the Hollow Keep, then it will reset certain settings and then transport you back to the main save point. However, if this continue switch is not on, that means you're starting a new game. It will run this code here that basically sets up a new game, among which is actually turning on that continue switch so that this only runs once per playthrough. And that is basically how this game handles save files, is that it will, instead of reloading the game where you saved it, every time you load the game, you will load right here, and this event will run, which handles the entire loading process for the game and puts you wherever you need to be. And I will give you one more example of this by actually setting up a save point. And we're going to have to, this could be a little bit finicky. I'm going to set up a save point in this corner of this one map here. We may need to actually do a couple runs to figure out, not a couple runs, but we may have to go through a couple different maps to figure out where exactly we're going to be going. Sorry, words are not working very well for me today. My brain's not really working out. Okay, so as you can see, because with this file we actually did save in the dungeon, We didn't respawn in the dungeon because of that script. We are now back at the Hall Keep. However, we have no more gold, and we have lost all our consumable items. And if we go back to the save file that originally we kind of extracted that from, you can see that this file actually, once it loads up, does have some gold in the bottom left corner there. And I guess we didn't have any items in the first place, but we did lose all our gold. Now, if we have a save point, I'm sorry for the terrible lag. My computer is not great, so this is a lot for it to handle right now. I guess I can go full screen for this. Oh, no. Okay. I'm going to debug this just to get us to where we need to be. Yeah, I probably should have gone full screen for this whole process, but I did not. Okay, so we're where we need to be now. Now, if I step onto this tile to the left here, the screen will flash, which means that our save point is active. And if we save the game here, and then we reload, we should reload right where we left off. The fog has been turned off because this is not a map that's designed to have a save point. But this can be used in later dungeons where, say, it's right before a boss fight, and you've already been through a 15-floor dungeon, and so the developer, decide to show you the player mercy by putting a save point right before a critical boss fight, just as an example. In the middle of a dungeon, this obviously would not happen. But that is how I can set up save points within this game. However, if I save off of that save point, and I'm going to save it. Oh, no, I can't save it on a different file because I re-enabled that script. I'm going to lose my gold on this file, and that's okay. If I save off the save point and then reload that same file, as you can see, we get sent back to the keep. So that's how the save system works in this game. I'm going to remove this save point just to make sure that I don't forget to do so. That's how the save system works in this game. It is fairly custom. But yeah, it's I'm really happy with the result. Actually, it really feeds into the idea of this is random dungeon generation, random loot generation, and it creates a system where you have limited save functionality, but you can still save the game anywhere. I should actually talk about that though. Is why allow players to save anywhere if they don't actually keep any of their progress? They just get warped back to the keep and they lose their progress in that dungeon. The reason for that is again because of the loot system. So I'm just going to show you, if I load up this file, let's go full screen for this. There we go. Okay, so you do lose any consumable items and gold when you're in a dungeon, but you do not lose any weapons or armors. And the reason for that is basically what you're looking at here. This is a legendary. Legendary weapons are extremely hard to find, but when you do find them, they can completely spike your character's stats. Like it can make a huge difference to how you're playing the game. Now, if I give you an example here, I'm just going to walk through this wall. Now, if I open this chest, okay, I'll take this javelin. Now, if I save the game, I will lose any consumable items and gold that I find, but I will keep any weapons and armor that I found in this run through the dungeon. And I'll give you an example by taking this item. So I have an item, but I also have this new weapon that I just picked up. It's not very good, that's not the point. Now if I save the game, and I reload, oh, the lag is terrible. I need to get a new computer. But one thing at a time. So I've lost that grape that I picked up, but I did find this javelin and I was able to keep it. So being able to save in the dungeon, while you lose your progress through the dungeon and you lose any held items and gold that you have, you do keep any loot that you found throughout that run. So that's why I allowed for saving anywhere in the game, but only allowed for, I guess, keeping your progression and anything that you found as far as items and gold go when you save at certain points. There's another game that uses a similar system, and it's sorry about that. There's a game that uses a similar system, and it's actually fairly well known. It's Fable. If you've ever played Fable, I'm thinking especially Fable 1. I think I started playing Fable 2 and then lost interest, but I know in Fable 1 especially, and the Lost Chapters, um, there were two different types of saves. You could do a hero save and a world save. And if you were in the middle of a quest, you could not do a world save. You could only do a hero save, which, if I'm remembering correctly, meant that you would keep all your items, your experience, and statistics and things like that. But you would not you would not save any progression through the quests that you were on. If you wanted to save your story progression and completed quests and things like that, you needed to wait until you were done the quest and you had no active quests, and then you could do a world save, which would save not only your character progression and all the items you had, but also your progress through the game. This is similar. This is essentially you can save anywhere, and you're going to save your character progress, such as their experience, their skills, any weapons and armor they found. But if you try to save anywhere except for in a safe place, such as the Hollow Keep or at a save point, then you will lose any progression you have in the dungeon you're currently in, as well as any held items and gold. So that's the save system that I developed for this game, as well as why I made those decisions and how certain decisions tie together. Things like having the loot system and the locker necessitated the need for single save file for per playthrough, and how, you know, increasingly rare and powerful loot necessitated the need for saving anywhere but not saving progress, and how, you know, having chests that randomly generate loot necessitated the need for respawn points instead of saving and reloading anywhere in the game. So yeah, that's it for this video. I just wanted to talk about that system. I'm going to be doing more videos talking about some of the mechanics and how they were developed, and why certain decisions were made around developing those systems. But for now, I wanted to start with this one since it was on my mind. And yeah, next time we'll probably actually dive a bit more into the loot system and how that works. But for now, I wanted to share this with you. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.